Okay, so I can guarantee that today this video will not be long. Will not be long at all. I have not been able to muster up the amount of energy that I need to be vibrant today. Like I'm really dragging. Um, and I think it's just because my schedule right now is requiring me to be in a lot of places at one time, and my duties and responsibilities are still requiring me to perform at the level um, that is necessary for things to be performed at. Not only that, but it's also requiring me not to half do anything, even though my energy right now is screaming, go to bed, go to bed all day, go to bed all night. Like, just take a whole self-care day for yourself. It's just not within my benefit to stop now. I've made so much progress, and it's been really good progress. And I go back to, I believe it's First or Second Corinthians, when David told Solomon, before he got ready to build the temple. I actually pulled it up right here. Thank you, Holy Spirit, for guiding me here effortlessly. But it's First Chronicles, actually, chapter 28, verse 20. And it says, David also said to Solomon, his son, be strong and courageous and do the work. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord God, my God, is with you. He will not fail you or forsake you until all the work for the service of the temple of the Lord is finished. And that's something that I have really been meditating on a lot, especially in those moments like this, where like I know that what I'm doing is a representation of temple. It's good. It's what I want to represent God. And so I know that it's going to require a lot of energy to be exerted. And sometimes you're going to be able to push the gas, you're going to be able to push the gas pedal and just go, 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 go. But then you're going to get to some points in the journey where you are, or, while doing the work, you are going to get to some points where you're going to have to really pace yourself and understand that the work still needs to be done. But you don't have the same type of energy that you had in the beginning to exert to certain parts of the process, and that's okay. That's something that I have been really, really learning to manage better, because up until this point, my life has always been this idea of like believing that I should always have this certain type of momentum, and anytime that momentum would dwindle, then I would be really hard on myself and it would cause me to stop. But just by continuing to study my Bible and pick up wisdom from God and pick up counsel from God, ever since I read that in First Chronicles, that has been what has been keeping me going. But nonetheless, I said all of that to basically just make reference to my energy and how I know for sure that this video is not going to be 45 minutes today, because I got to move on to the next task and I'm tired. So I'm trying my best to move quickly but efficiently through everything today, and hoping that I can get into bed at a decent time, so that way when I get up in the morning, I'm not feeling like this. I may not have the type of energy I had when I started, but I do realize that I'm at points right now where I do really need to take some rest. Not so much take breaks, but take rest, so that way I can finish. Because what I'm working on right now, I'm literally in the last week of it. And so if I can just get through this week, then I know I have a break coming. And that's kind of what's keeping me motivated. But then after that break, I have to come back renewed, restored, refreshed, and ready to do the continuation of the work. But nonetheless, I came here and stopped by the neighborhood today, because I wanted to talk about Psalm 46. When I did my video about the illustration of the royal wedding, representing our commitment to Christ, I made mention in that video that I felt like Psalm 46 was, you know what I just thought about? I have a microphone. I don't know why I've been doing these videos without that microphone. But nonetheless, I felt like the psalm that came after Psalm 45, which is Psalm 46, was a continuation from the illustration, but going into the representation of marriage. Because one of the infamous verses that you hear at a lot of women's conferences and things like that as it relates to the Christian faith present day is Psalms 46 verse 5, where it says, God is within her, she will not fail. God will help her at daybreak. And I think for me, when I was doing my study of the first couple of books of Psalms, and Psalms 46 was what I began to study, I just immediately thought from that verse 5 that this entire psalm was about, oh, this is a representation of the foundation of marriage, and it's using God's commitment and God's relationship to Jerusalem, because that's the feminine reference in this psalm. I thought that was being used to, backdoor Psalm 45 and say, well, here's a wedding, now here's the marriage. But I told myself that I would do my due diligence to do a deep dive on Psalms 46. And today I am confident enough to say that maybe my desire for that psalm, or for Psalm 46 to be about foundation of marriage, I think it may have just been something that I wanted, but I don't think that psalm is what that is about. Overall, what I was able to conclude, and I read a lot of commentary on enduringword.com, and the way that they broke it down basically led me to believe that Psalm 46 is more about surrendering to God's will, and the reference to her, or Jerusalem, is not so much to give us a representation of anything metaphorical, or anything poetic, or anything like an illustration like I felt like Psalm 45 did. I feel like it's just giving us context to what we already know, and the theme that shows up in the Bible all the time, which is God is our safe place, God is our refuge. We shouldn't fear, we should be still. And the reference to Jerusalem, or her, in this particular psalm is more so talking about a chosen place that God has chosen. And I did a little bit more research today about Jerusalem and its contribution to like society and nations. And Jerusalem has also always been a unique city because it doesn't have a river per se. It has a lot of smaller streams of water, but it is abundant and prosperous. It is an abundant and prosperous land, which doesn't surprise me at all, because we know, just as believers and through the Christian faith and research and listening to other people's commentary, I think we all collectively conclude that God sets his holy things apart, and they don't always look like what the mind, or what the human, or what the rest of the world would perceive as something that would be an obvious good, or that would be an obvious place to set up shop, or that would be an obvious place to whatever. Like, God's holy things are set apart with their own unique characteristics that to the mind makes no sense, but to the whole entire kingdom, to God, and to everything holy is perfectly placed, and it makes perfect sense. So this is what I want to do. First, I want to say that I do not believe that Psalm 46 is a representation of the foundation of marriage, because even though the infamous, verse, God is within her, she will not fail, God will help her at daybreak, is in there. I think that it has more to do, like I said, with what we already know. God has a chosen place that he has his protection over. And that's something that we need to use to understand the rest of this psalm, so that we understand why God is our refuge, and that we understand the depth and the intimacy of that refuge. And so that we also know what it means to have refuge in God, to be able to dwell with God, to know God so well, and to be so familiar with God that when we take refuge in him, that we can be there and we don't have to put up a wrestling match. We don't have to put up a wrestling fight. And the same God who will be with us individually will also be with us collectively, because that's just how magnificent he is. That's his splendor. That's his majesty. But in the end of it all, no matter what comes our way, no matter what we're threatened by, no matter how many enemies we may have, whether it's enemies that we, actively brought up to our doorsteps, or just people who just don't like us, because the Psalms do say that by being chosen by God, there will just be people who just won't like you just because you are chosen by God. And not in the way of an arrogant way of saying things or saying that you're better than somebody, but just knowing, like I said, that God's people, God's believers, God's holy things are set apart. When you choose to be a believer, you are redeemed by Christ. And when you are redeemed by Christ, you are set apart from the rest of the world, from the rest of the people who do not believe, which means that just because you are redeemed, you will be attacked. The target on your back will expand, and you could do exceedingly well, or you could do terribly bad. And no matter which way you do it, somebody is always going to probably find a problem with it, because there's going to and I'm saying this part from experience, there's going to be something that you do in every season, whether the outcome and the overall calibration of things says exceptionally well, or the outcome of the overall calibration of things say terribly terrible. There's going to be something about your performance that's always going to stand out, and that something is God. That something is God working for you. It is that infamous verse that shows up in this psalm that says, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted amongst the nations and will be exalted in the earth." It's a bigger scheme here. There's a bigger motif here in everything that we do. I feel like for me, that's the reason why my prayer life has become different. What I pray for and how I pray and why I pray and when I pray and what I pray about has become different, because I've matured, not only just as a woman, but, in my faith, in my spiritual walk with God, and I understand the motif better. And the motif is just a running theme. It's a reoccurring theme. And I feel like that reoccurring theme is God is our refuge. He's our rock. He's our redeemer. He's our strength. We can go to him during hard times. When we are distressed, we can run to him. When I did my research today, that's what the research was saying. And it kind of refined the way I'm going to continue to study the rest of the Psalms. And if I ever need to refer back to a psalm, it gives me more context to know that the beginning of a psalm, according to the research that I did today, is presenting the thought or the heart or the feeling or the emotion of the psalmist. And so in the beginning of this psalm, I'm about to get ready to read it here, and then I'll read my notes, and then I'll wrap up. The logic or the theme or the feeling of this particular psalmist that published this. And let me see if I can figure out if there's an author listed. Hold on 1 second. No particular author, but it does say that this psalm was written for the director of music of the sons of Korah, according to the Alamath, a song. And I wrote here that an Alamath is soprano, just say it's soprano, right? And I also seen in my research today that this was a psalm that the sons of Korah were the directors of music during that time, which was typically, I think I mentioned this in another video, descendants of the Levites. This was a song that they would reach to when they were in distress. And there's been a lot coming up. It's just so beautiful how everything just always is interconnected, because before I came back to do my deep dive of Psalm 46 this week, towards the end of last week, I had started reading the 5th book, and that 5th book starts with the 107th Psalm, and this psalm is talking about distress and trouble. So Basically, distress is just moments where we are unraveled. We are spiraling out of control, mainly because we have taken it upon ourselves to wonder and to wander and wonder, and no longer look for the spiritual food and the spiritual water, or the spiritual uh, quenching that is good for us because of how God designed us to be. We go out here searching for other things um, to try to make it mimic God or be in lieu of God, when at the end of the day, doing that will lead you lost. It will make you be rebellious. It will lead you to say foolish things, which, if said too many times, will make you be a fool, will make you foolish, will lead us to be arrogant and proud, and believing that the things that we do and the works that we create are because we did it and because we're so magnificent. And these are the things that often lead to the distress and the anxiety and the depression that we deal with. And this is a recurring theme in mental health conversations today. It's trauma. It's being tossed about the storms of life. It's our response to trouble. When at the end of the day, if distress starts to become your if distress is what you produce during the storms of life and during times of trouble, and depression and anxiety as a result of that stuff, it's 9 times out of 10 because you have wandered due to wondering. And God is telling us in the 46th Psalm to know that He is our refuge and our strength, and that we can always come home to Him and know that He is worthy. It even says here in the 107th Psalm, and then I'm going to get to Psalm 46. It says here, give thanks to the Lord, for He is good. His love endures forever. Let the redeemed, those who are saved of the Lord, say this, those He redeemed from the hands of the foe, those He gathered from the lands, from east and west and north and south. But we'll come back to that on another time or another day if I feel like it's necessary. But Psalm 46, it says, God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging. Selah. That means to pause and think about that. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy place where the Most High dwells. God is within her, she will not fail. God will help her at the break of day. Nations are in uproar, kingdoms fall. He lifts His voice, the earth melts. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress, Selah. Come and see the works of the Lord, the desolations He has brought on the earth. He makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the shield with fire. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Selah. And this is basically saying that, like I said, God is who we turn to. God is who we run to. And this is, I read this from the translation of the NIV version. And my notes here, it says, pausing my reading of the 5th book of Psalms to do a deep dive study on Psalm 46. If I have time to go back to Psalm 108 today, I will, but I originally felt like Psalm 46 is about the foundation, the unshakable foundation of marriage represented by God's relationship to Jerusalem, as it follows the illustration of a royal wedding, symbolizing commitment to Christ and the church. What stuck out to me in Psalm 46 was the 5th verse that says, God is within her, she will not fail, God will help her at daybreak. This one verse has been used to strengthen women of faith for years, and we appreciate it as such, but the motivation, though lovely, is out of context. So let's look into it. And then I said here what I said earlier, a good website to better understand is enduringword.com. So going back to the point, I digress. A point to note, the reference to the crags and the connies and the high mountains and the wild goats are about refuge. I talked about this in my video about Psalms 104 and 105, and I made reference to having to look up the crags and the connies. And coincidentally enough, like I said, how beautiful is it that all of these things are interconnected, that I'm trying to do a deep dive on Psalms 46, and the crags and the connies that are referenced in the Proverbs are being used to strengthen the conversation or the theories or the points being made about Psalms 46. So it says, I'll go back to what I wrote here. It says, a point to note, the reference to the crags and connies and the high mountains and wild goats are about refuge. And that's in Psalms 104, verse 18. I made reference to this in my study of the 104th Psalm. While studying Psalms 46, I'm brought back to the 104th Psalm because of the reference of the proverb that references the connie and the crag. And his references shows us how God is our refuge and how we are to turn to God when we are in distress and danger, much like the connie goes to the crags and the wild goat goes to the mountains. They go back to a habitat that is familiar and owned. And then I put in quotations, sounds like a home, to feel safe. God is our refuge, meaning he is our place to dwell. He's a familiar place, or he should be at least. He's easy to locate, and he belongs to us just as much as he belongs to him. And then I put in parentheses here, this is about us owning, but not so much ownership. And then I've continued on after I continued to read and do my study. And I said what I basically said at the beginning of this video, which is I can confidently say that I don't believe my observation that Psalm 46 is a reference to marriage, but that may not be, no, I'm sorry. I can confidently say that I don't believe my observation that Psalm 46 is reference to a marriage. But that may not be concrete, meaning, you know, it could still mean that, but I think that I can kind of go to another way of thinking on this and leave the marriage part that I was feeling or, you know, desiring it to be in the back of my mind, because we know that the word of God is universal. So what it could mean in context today, it could mean something else, but it doesn't mean that you take it out of context, if that makes sense. Like, I could use Psalm 46 to talk about marriage, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it is about marriage, the same way that I can use Psalm 46 to talk about refuge during war and distress and turbulence. Although it may not necessarily be about that. Let me get into it so that way I can make this make sense. It says, there are themes of covenant, protection, refuge, safety, but these themes are all throughout the Bible. The reference to Psalm 46:5 is about a chosen city of God not being moved by anything or catastrophe around it. While deep down I wanted this to follow up the royal wedding illustration in Psalm 45 as the representation of a foundation of a strong marriage, I think this has more to do with God protecting one and protecting all from their enemies. It's intimate, but it's also collective. In other words, this is more about trusting God's will despite the circumstances. But of course, this is just my thoughts coupled with a reading that gives an in-depth explanation. Neither my thoughts nor the thoughts presented on Enduring Word is right or wrong, just ideas to consider, although I feel like the commentary and breakdown on Enduring Word are stronger than my own. And so basically at the end of the day, what I gathered from all of this is what I've been saying this entire video, is that God is our refuge and he is our strength. He is ever present, right? That's where I was saying familiar. It's just like if you were to go somewhere today, you went to a new place you've never been before, you're gonna always know how to get back home. Your home, being able to find your house, your home, the place that you live is ever present, right? No matter which way you go, no matter where you go, you can always find your way back to your home address. But it says, you know, God is our refuge and our strength, an ever-present help in trouble. He's always there when we're in trouble and distress. Therefore, we don't have anything to fear. Though the earth may give way, though things may change, and the mountain may fall into the heart of the sea, though, you know, things may be catastrophic and traumatic, though its waters roar and foam and the mountains quake, with their surging. Even though all of these things are happening, right? We know that the creator of the earth is also the place that we as believers can dwell when he is commanding the earth to do things that may make us tremble a little bit. In other words, the creator of life is our dwelling place, even though at times in our life he may be commanding things to happen that may be a little bit turbulent or traumatic or shaky, as we perceive it. We can still dwell with God, even though he's commanding for these things to happen, and it doesn't necessarily scream comfort for us, you know? And then there's a river whose streams, so we're going into a new thought here. There's a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy place where the Most High dwell. God is within her. She will not fail. God will help her at daybreak. Like I was saying, it's a unique place. There's a place that we go, right? There's a river whose streams make glad the city of God. All of this stuff is happening, but there is a place that we can go, right? And and this place is abundant, and this place is uniquely made to glorify and exalt God and worship God and praise God just like us. And so God will always be with her. God will always be in that dwelling place, that place of refuge. God will always be there. It's familiar to us. And even though everything else around the world is happening, crumbling, mountains is falling into the sea, turbulence is present, that one particular place will not fail. It will always be prosperous because God is there. That place is a place of refuge. Refuge is our safety place. Refuge is our home. Refuge is us with God, and he is everywhere and ever present. And no matter how far we go this way or how far we go that way, in times of trouble, in distress, we can always go back home. That's why it's important to know where God is and know how to locate God. Know who God is. Be familiar with God, so that way you're not feeling like you got to run to a friend, or you got to run to a church, or you got to run to a Wednesday night Bible study. There's nothing wrong with any of that stuff. But sometimes we go looking for God in places that obviously, collectively he's there. But what about individually? What about when you leave that Bible study? What about when you leave that church service? What about when you leave that friend's house who's a believer? How do you find God on your own? How is God familiar to you in your own worship and in your own praise? Where is that dwelling place that you go that will not fail? Can you find it? Can you locate it? That's a rhetorical question. The nations are in uproar, kingdoms fall. He lifts his voice, and the earth melts away. Again, at his command, it all does what he says. And nations are in uproar, kingdoms fall, things are failing, things are turbulent. Like I said, the same creator of life who commands the things sometimes in our life to be turbulent is the same creator that we can go and find a safe place in. We can go and find refuge in. This is a common theme here. We're dealing with double and triple and quadruple entendres here. Whoever wrote this, whoever put the literary logic behind it, they're constantly giving us different metaphors and different approaches and angles that we can look at these things to still understand the same motif, which is a lot of stuff going on at the command of God. And that same person and that same God who is commanding these turbulences is the same God that we can find refuge in. The same God who is commanding these traumas is the same God that we can go and dwell with. And once we get in that dwelling place, that unique place that he has chosen to do abundant and prosperous things, it will not fail. Don't let what's going on around you fool you. Don't let it be a distraction. I have a verse right here on my desk that I always have to reference to and meditate on because of the type of job that I have. And it says here, sing to the Lord, you saints of his, praise his holy name, for his anger lasts only a moment, but his favor lasts a lifetime. Weeping may endure for a night, but rejoicing comes in the morning. In other words, anytime you start to feel fear, or you start to feel something that distresses you or unravels you, that's a distraction. If Jerusalem is the chosen place and you live in Jerusalem and you start seeing everything around you, all these nations and things around you is turning down and falling apart at the command of God, you can stay there and know that whatever is happening is but a moment. That the favor of this place, this favor of this refuge, this favor of this dwelling place that I'm in, it has favor from God and it's forever, right? I have to say that while I'm at work, because sometimes I get irritated about things and I have to remind myself, Jasmine, that is a distraction. Take your focus off of that. If you focus on that, you're going to be distressed. You're going to be anxious. You're going to be depressed. You have been there before. Instead, know that your favor with God is forever. Where you dwell with God while you're here in this place is forever, and everything that's happening around you is happening at God's command. But the same God that's commanding all of this irritation and stuff that's going on around you with all of these people who don't want to listen and don't want to obey and don't halfway know why they got a job, and these customers who get on your nerves and being rude and being disrespectful and being evil, is but a moment. That's why I feel like that's the reason why that particular psalm is actually Psalm, to be specific, 34 through 5. It's the reason why it uses anger. It uses an emotion, I feel like, because what I'm starting to learn the more I get into my study is that anytime I feel something that feels like, oh my God, like distress, like trouble, I know it's a distraction. Anyways, I digress. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress, right? The Lord Almighty is intimately with me, and the Lord, or the God of Jacob, the Lord Almighty is the Lord Almighty is collectively with us. He's grand enough to be with us all, and he's grand enough just to be with me like he was with Jacob. That's the intimacy there. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Selah, stop and think about that. Coming into a new thought here at verse 8. Come and see the works of the Lord, the desolation he has brought onto the earth, the destruction he has brought on the earth. He makes wars cease. He makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the shield with fire. Again, at his command. Here's the turbulence. Here's the desolation. Here's the destruction. Okay? And then verse 10 is God speaking. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted amongst the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. Be still, meaning stop putting up this fight. Surrender to me. Surrender to my command. Because as you can see at my command, the earth, the wars, the nations, the people, the lands, they all do what I say. Even down to Jerusalem, even down to her. I command her to be my unique, chosen, specific, holy place. And at my command, she is what she is. Her uniqueness is because she is what I said she is. So be still. I used to think, and I think for so long it's been taught to us that be still is about peace. And while I do feel like it can have a double meaning and a double reference here, I feel like specifically for Psalm 46, as I read on the enduring word, and I agree with it, that's why I'm using it as a strong point of view here. It's saying, put down your weapons, put down your trouble, everything, put down your bungalow, or the little things that they made back in the day, when there was all of that uproar about World War II, and it was possibly gonna be nuclear bombs, and you had to make like those little, I can't remember what you called them, but they were like little homes under the earth. Put all of that away. You ain't got to worry about all of that. Just be still. If you know that I am your fortress, and you know that I am your refuge, you know that I'm your place of safety, much like the wild goats go into the mountains, much like the connies go into the crags, much like they go into those habitats of safety. If you here in my refuge, be still. When you go home at night, you don't go home feeling like, oh my gosh, everything that scared me out in the world is going to be here in home. Some people might, but you shouldn't. But, ideally, when most people go home, all of their worries and things, they don't matter within those walls, because they know that their home is a safe place. You can be still. And that's what God is telling us here. If you know that I'm your refuge, why are you still kicking and screaming and putting up a fight? Be still. You're safe. Be still. I got this. I will be exalted in the earth. I will be the highest rank in the earth. I already am. I created it. And then it ends with the Lord Almighty is with us. Another confident reminder that God is collectively with his people, and the God of Jacob is our fortress, and intimately he is our defense. He is our shield, and we will be okay. So I just wanted to put this out there to wrap up the to wrap up just the observations that I was making with Psalms 46 and 45, and basically come back to basically say, no, I don't feel like Psalm 46 is a continuation of 45. I just feel like at the end of the day, it is what God has always said he is to us. And to a certain extent, I guess that can make a person believe that it is covenant in the sense of like a promise, like a marriage, but I don't think that that is what this theme is here. I think that it is a separate theme. But hope everybody has a great day.